Okay, good morning, everyone. This is the July 9th, Washington and North Idaho fire weather briefing. I am Valerie over in Spokane, and we're representing Eastern Washington and North Idaho. And then we have Seattle and Western Washington, we have Logan. Our regular disclosure, this meeting is being recorded. By joining and participating in this session, consent is being given to the recording. And please keep your cameras off per the NOAA Privacy Act statement. Okay, so first looking at our current satellite imagery, we do have this system moving across Washington and North Idaho and even Oregon across the Pacific Northwest that has brought cooler temperatures across the region and is bringing some cloud cover to Western Washington and some scattered cloud cover across Eastern Washington and North Idaho. This will bring cooler temperatures, but also our windier conditions that we are messaging for today. Just taking a closer look at the satellite imagery, you can see with that system, widespread overcast skies across Western Washington, and this will bring the shower chances across the Cascades and parts of Western Washington for today. We could see some isolated scattered cloud cover across Eastern Washington and North Idaho. We'll see a pickup in clouds this afternoon and evening, but we're not expecting much in the way of precipitation. We might see some light isolated scattered showers across Northeast Washington and North Idaho this afternoon and evening with a slight chance of thunderstorms, but we will get to that in a second. Most of the coverage will be north of the border. And I will pass it over to Logan to speak about Western Washington.
Thanks, Valerie. So like you mentioned today, we'll have cool and rainy conditions today across Western Washington. And then that quickly comes to an end when we get the next upper level ridge coming in. And so we'll see warm and dry conditions starting on Friday. We'll get some more onshore flow for the weekend. So that will be a little bit cooler compared to Friday and a little bit more moist. Though looking towards next week, we look to have another upper level ridge building. We'll have to see exactly how that pans out, but we are looking at potentially some warmer, drier, and breezier conditions across Western Washington.
Thanks, Logan. So yeah, for Eastern Washington today, we are in critical because we do have widespread red flag warnings out for dry and windy conditions. And then, as I mentioned, there's that slight chance for thunderstorms across the far northeast region of Eastern Washington. And then for North Idaho, we are still messaging elevated conditions for dry and breezy conditions across kind of the southern and central panhandle. The Missoula office does have a red flag warning out for that area. So that, as we look in the next slide, you could see where that breaks out. And then we will see cooler temperatures for Thursday after kind of this post-front air mass. And then we start to warm up again as we get Friday into the weekend. Be under kind of a flat ridge. It'll be building, but the onshore flow will continue to provide some breezy conditions across, especially central Washington, and then seeing some breezier conditions kind of widespread through the rest of the period. And then as we get into, like Logan mentioned, later into the week and maybe in the middle of next week, might see some more heightened breezy conditions, but we'll keep an eye on that as we move further through this week. Highlighting the specific regions across Eastern Washington and North Idaho, you can see everywhere in red is where there are current red flag warnings out, and these are in effect until 8 p.m. tonight. Pendleton has their Columbia Basin up through 10 p.m., but all of the forecast zones in Spokane's area and then even in Missoula's area are in through 8 p.m. tonight. And this is for breezy to stronger west winds, 15 to 30 mile per hour sustained with gusts 35 to 45 miles per hour. Minimum RHs with that onshore flow and rainy conditions in western Washington. We will see higher RHs in central Washington in more in the 25 to 30% range, but more speaking specifically to like the Wenatchee area, the Howe Valley, see higher RHs, but the winds will be strong enough to overcome those higher RHs. But then as we move further into eastern Washington and North Idaho, minimum RHs between 15 to 25% will be common, with the driest conditions more in the Spokane area and then far northeast Washington and the North Idaho zones. The winds across our northern northeast Washington zones will be a bit lighter, winds 8 to 15 miles per hour, maybe some higher gusts across more exposed ridges. And so these aren't a red flag warning, and we didn't have these highlighted yesterday as yellow, but since we had that new Hope fire that popped up north of Kettle Falls, that kind of blew up into, at least for what I'm seeing, 3,200 acres. I did want to highlight that because we will see some breezier winds and it will be pretty dry. And then once the winds start to die down this afternoon, is later in the evening and overnight, we'll see a wind shift to the north, but the winds will be decreasing as they shift to the north. And then there will also be that potential for some isolated showers and thunderstorms. As we look into the hazards, as I mentioned, there's pretty much widespread red flag warnings across eastern Washington and North Idaho. Not specifically our Idaho Zone 101, but Zone 102 in Idaho does have a red flag warning and kind of encompassing much of eastern Washington. So you look at the weather to see our temperatures for today will still be pretty warm with highs in the mid 80s to low 90s, and then down in the LC Valley, kind of mid 90s, but it's much cooler than the temperatures that we saw yesterday. And as we see that breakdown of that ridge cooling down. And then for minimum RHs, as I mentioned, central Washington, mostly like the directly of the Cascades near Wenatchee up through the Howe and Omak, and even in the Columbia Basin, we'll see higher RHs with that push of marine air, but the winds, I'll show in the next slide, will be much stronger, kind of overcome that higher RHs. And again, the eastern Washington and North Idaho, we see pretty much widespread 15 to 25%, with less of an influence from that marine air and be much drier and windier. Looking at the wind, see we're expecting for sustained winds 15 to 25 miles per hour. And even isolated spots across the Waterville Plateau of 25 to 30 mile per hour sustained winds. And then the wind gusts will be the big thing as well, with widespread 35 to 40, and then even higher across the northern Columbia Basin and the Waterville Plateau. And then as across northern, where that new Hope fire is, we see gusts. The fire is north of Kettle Falls, so it'd be more in the lighter blue, darker blue with 15 to miles per hour or less, and then gusts up to 15 to 20 miles per hour. So that will still be a concern for that fire, but not in hitting our critical conditions for a red flag warning. And then just wanting to touch on the thunder chances for this afternoon and evening. 10 to 20% chance across northeast Washington and North Idaho, with actually where our new fire, the new Hope fire, is having the 20% chance, the highest chances for lightning. Looking at just the ingredients for it, I would not very confident that there will be lightning strikes, but with the mountains providing some stronger lift, and there might be some isolated strikes, but confidence is very low. And then passing it over to Logan to talk about wedding rains.
Thanks. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight today, looking at the chance for wedding rain. We've already seen about 1/4 to 1/2 inch on the Pacific coast and at some of the RAWs in the northern Cascades. But as this funnel system kind of moves to the southeast throughout the day, we'll see some showers with the best chances, again, like I said, on the Pacific coast and through portions of the North Cascades. And we may also see some convergence zone showers there going into like Snohomish and northern King County. Areas like Seattle southward will be mostly shadowed throughout the day, though there is still some chances for some light showers throughout the day today. And then quickly here, just wanted to highlight the min RHs on the west side for Friday here as we get that weak ridge moving overhead. Our flow will turn more like southwesterly, so we won't have as strong of onshore flow, and we'll see min RHs dip well into the 30s throughout most of the area through the interior and the Cascades, though. Looks like the driest RHs will be down there through the southwest interior and through portions of the central and southern Washington Cascades. And then moving on to our trends here, we'll start with Hosamine for Western Washington. So you can see here today we have the cool, moist conditions. So our RH is very high, cloudy, rainy conditions here. And then Thursday we'll start that warming trend, but we'll really dry out there on Friday, where we'll get those RHs back below 30%. That onshore flow starts to kick back in through the weekend, so we'll have a little bit better recoveries and a little bit higher RHs through the weekend. Though as we move to next week, we're looking at a stronger ridge, some stronger high pressure building in, potentially even a thermal trough as we get into the middle of next week. So there we'll start to see a switch to offshore flow, a more sustained period of offshore flow starting Tuesday. And as you can see there, those RHs start to follow suit with poor recoveries during the day, and also our min RHs dipping back into the 20s and potentially the teens, depending on how much that kicks in. And our high temperatures will also warm back up into the 90s there. So starting next week, we'll really be looking at those really warm and dry conditions, and we'll have to monitor how strong those winds develop starting Tuesday. We could see some enhanced flow through some of the gaps in the west side. But I believe that's all I have for me. I'll turn it back over to you, Valerie.
Thanks, Logan. And so just wanting to highlight Central Washington, looking at the Indiana RAWs, as you can see today, is forecasted our strongest period of winds. You can see our winds up to maybe sustained 30, 31 miles per hour strictly from the west for this afternoon. But you can see for Central Washington, as I showed earlier, our minimum RHs will be higher in the 30% ranges for this one specific point. This might be a little too high, but I would still expect the forecast to be in the 30% range for much of Central Washington. And then I wanted to look at what's it called? I wanted to look at Kettle Falls because that's the closest RAWs to that new fire. And you could see the winds really will be lighter compared to Central Washington, but we'll still see the breezier conditions with RHs in the low 20% range. We'll see pretty good recoveries tonight in Kettle Falls, lower in the valleys, but might see less of a recovery higher up on the ridges. And then looking further into the week, we'll just gradually warm up through the weekend and into next week with pretty dry conditions, but then might see some afternoon breezes, but nothing is sticking out as a critical period just yet. But if we do go back through tonight, you can see that the winds will be primarily from the west through this afternoon and evening. Then as they start to decrease overnight, later 10 p.m. and 11 p.m., we'll start to see a shift more to the east, and then maybe even down to the north through the afternoon, through the evening into early tomorrow morning. So those, if anyone here is monitoring that fire, that's something to keep an eye on. And then I wanted to look at the potlatch RAWs because that is where the Missoula office does have a red flag warning out. Kind of similar cooler conditions compared to yesterday, but still highs in the upper 80s with RHs down into the mid 20% range with breezy westerly winds and pretty low chances for precipitation. And then just trending warmer through the next week. When you look at our temperature outlook, the Climate Prediction Center does have the Northwest under higher confidence for above average temperatures through the middle to near the end of July, and kind of a mix between below for Western Washington, near normal for central and parts of southeastern Washington, and then above average for northeast Washington and North Idaho. But our averages this time of year are for precipitation are pretty low, so it could see just if there is a showery period where we see afternoon showers across that region, northeast Washington and North Idaho, it can see have spots that will be above average for precipitation. And as always, you can find us, do a self-briefing at our fire dashboard. Let's stop this recording.